Thanks everybody for being here. I'm Andrew Gruber. I'm the Executive Director of the Wasatch Front Regional Council. So we are not league staff, but we are a partner organization with the awesome Utah League of Cities and Towns. And for this first of 3 breakout sessions, we're going to be talking about transportation. That's the topic for the next 15 minutes, transportation. And then you've got, I don't know what the order is going to be, but you've got water, and then risk and liability. So I think ours is the most interesting, right? Okay. So the objective that we have for you today, myself and Ted Knowlton, who is the WFRC Deputy Director, is just to give an overview of how transportation planning and funding works in Utah. And then what you, as a local elected official, what your role can be as you're looking out for your community. I noted before that the #1 issue that people, you all, in filling out your surveys about the issues you care about, transportation is a top issue along with housing. And that's not a surprise, particularly for rapid growing communities. Anybody, by raise of hands, you have concern about traffic and travel demands in your communities? Yes? I'm expecting everybody's going to say yes. Oh, Hooper, not a problem in Hooper. No, not at all. Mayor Fowers, you didn't raise your hand. Okay. Not yet. Okay, not yet? Okay. Okay, so no transportation dollars for Hooper. That's what I'm hearing. Just kidding, just kidding, just kidding. Okay, let me start with where we sort of start all of these conversations about issues in Utah these days, and that's with population growth. You know that Utah has been the fastest growing state in the nation over the past decade. This is nothing new. We've been growing rapidly. We're at about 3.5 million people now, and our growth is projected to continue unabated so that we're at about 5.25 or 5.5 million people by 2050. So you have to think about the implications of adding another 2 million people to Utah in the few decades to come, right? Think about the implications for housing demand, air quality, job availability, and traffic and travel demand and transportation generally. Now, that growth that we're experiencing, we all think about and love the fact that Utah is this wide open state that has this beautiful natural lands. It's one of the most special things about Utah relative to other places. But we also know, even though we're a big, wide open western state, that our population is very heavily clustered on the Wasatch Front and then also down in Washington County. So just by show of hands, how many of you are actually Wasatch Front communities? Raise your hand. Okay, most. That doesn't mean that only Wasatch Front communities are confronting these growth challenges, but the majority of our growth is on the Wasatch Front. And did you know that Utah is actually the 8th most urban state in the nation based on the percentage of our population that lives in an urban area? And that's the clustering that you see here. So for transportation purposes, we have organizations that are aligned in those areas, those metropolitan areas that work on transportation planning. You're all familiar with UDOT, of course, that works on state roads for the entirety of the state. What you may not be familiar with, we have organizations that are called Metropolitan Planning Organizations. WFRC, our organization, is one of those. And there are 4 of them around the state, and you see the geography of their areas of responsibility. These MPOs are made up of you, local elected officials, city and county primarily, and we're designed to work with you all, cities and counties, UDOT, and I should hit the button and show UTA and the transit agencies in the state, to bring together cities and counties, UDOT and UTA, state legislators, the private sector, business community, community organizations, to plan for the future of transportation. Not just transportation, housing, land use, economic development, air quality, but we're talking principally about transportation today. All of that work collectively from all of those stakeholders gets combined into what we call Utah's Unified Transportation Plan. Utah is nationally known for its collaborative approach on planning for transportation and planning for growth in the future. Not every place does this. In a lot of other places, communities are fighting with each other. Here, we have a great approach of collaboration where neighbors work with neighbors, the state works with cities and counties and transit agencies, and we collaborate together to create Utah's unified transportation plan. The thing that's notable about this plan is that it looks at all the modes, we say, of transportation. So it looks at state roads, city and county roads, transit, so think front runner, tracks, bus rapid transit, bus service, and it also looks at what we call active transportation, which is biking as a trails and paths as a means of transportation, and also sidewalks and walking, all those means of transportation. It's comprehensive in that it looks at the need to develop and expand our transportation system to deal with that growth that we have. But just as importantly, it looks at the need to maintain our existing infrastructure in a state of good repair so that it's safe and available for our residents. And finally, it is comprehensive in that it looks at transportation, but not transportation alone. And Ted's going to talk more about this. It looks at transportation as it relates to your development, your housing, your land use that you as local governments control, and how all of those things relate to each other. Now, the purpose of all of this, the purpose of the Unified Transportation Plan and the work that we do is not to have in of itself a good transportation system. That is a means to broader goals. I would dare say the goals that you all were elected to advance for your community. And these are shared goals among all of the transportation agencies: good health, strong economy, better mobility, and connected communities. So now, Ted, come on up. Ted is the Deputy Director at the Wasatch Front Regional Council. He's also our lead planner. And he is, I think he may be Utah's newest city council person from North Salt Lake. So in that he was just appointed to fill a vacancy. So he's newer than most of you, even, right? Okay, Ted, take it away.
Okay, thanks a lot, Andrew. And it's great to be with you. So do you remember Cameron Deal this morning talking about Wasatch Choice, the Wasatch Choice vision? So we have, across the state, we have Utah's Unified Transportation Vision. The details are worked out along the greater Wasatch Front in the Wasatch Choice. Now, this is a collaborative effort of local governments and transportation agencies working out a land use, transportation, parks, open space, collaborated vision. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a high level of this vision, which you can look at and go through the details. There's the link to the website. You can zoom into your community and go through this. What I'm going to show you is, this is the picture of 2050. Okay, so this is if you got in your time machine, you landed, and here's the map of the region and how all those pieces fit together. Now, what you're looking at is southern Box Elder County, Brigham City on the north, all the way down through Payson and Utah County on the south. This is the geography of Wasatch Choice, inclusive of the Wasatch Back, Morgan, Tooele, Wasatch, Summit counties. I'm going to zoom in to Salt Lake County just to give you a sense of this. All right, so again, this is the picture of all of these pieces coming together in the year 2050. Now I'm going to just go through piece by piece and show you how all of these components come together. Starting with highways and major roads. What are the key major facilities that we have in place today? What are the new ones that together we're going to build out through to the year 2050? So we start with that piece. Add in the public transportation system. Remember, that's rail, bus rapid transit, bus, that piece. Active transportation, major trails, and ways to get around on bike and foot, pogo stick if you'd like. Hey. And then the idea of this is, this was built through extensive conversations, local government by local government, thinking about, well, what makes sense in my community as I think about regional transportation, all those things that we just talked about, as I think about what's happening in the communities next to mine, And that's what you're looking at here. So this is centers and specialized land uses. These are things like your major downtowns, the heart of your community. These are also major employment areas, key industrial areas. Now, if you look at that and you reflect on those polygons, this is the story essentially of where does it make sense for growth to occur in the communities across the Wasatch Front. Now, I'll just pause on that for just a second. Andrew talked about us being the fastest growing state in the country the last 10 years. Growth is a certainty in Utah. It has been for a long time. So we can't close the door on growth. Therefore, where are those best places, the strategic locations where we think, yeah, if growth is going to happen, maybe they should occur more in these places? That is the answer here. All of this came directly from local governments, so that's what that is. And then parks and open space, notably, and all of these pieces come together into an integrated, does it morph in? It does. Into an integrated system. Where does growth occur? How do we serve it with transportation? All of those different modes of transportation, parks and open space, shared vision, collaborated together, the Wasatch Choice vision. And so I hope that you'll take a look at that and explore it and understand how your feedback has been used in building this regional vision.
Thanks, Ted. So I really do encourage you to go check this out on your own I'll just repeat, we are not trying to tell you the right way for you to develop. You decide in your own community what's best and most important for you. We are here to capture that, think of it from a regional perspective, provide you with technical expertise and assistance and funding as you figure out what works best for you. Because what works best for Kaysville may be different than what works best in Spanish Fork or et cetera, or Hooper even, okay? So, now let's talk about money for a moment, because the funding that's available for transportation is obviously a critical component. This is one of the things that we work on all the time with the league and our partners in making sure there's resources available. So in an average year, let me just put all the pieces up of this, 3 basic components to transportation funding: state roads, local, so UDOT, local roads, city and county, and then transit. And what you can see here, this is not exact to any one particular year, but roughly on average in any given year, all sources in, this is the pie sizes for how much money is being spent on transportation and the sources. You see state roads is the largest one, with 3/4 of it coming from state funding. So state gas taxes, vehicle registration, and state sales tax. 25% coming from federal funds, including the federal gas tax. On the local side, it's less than that, less than half of that, about $640 million. So this is you now, and you think the majority of that comes from local funding sources. These are ones that the cities or the counties have control over. So think the sales taxes that have been imposed at the county level that flow to you, the general funds that you all put into transportation because the gas tax that you get, the 30% B and C, that's the blue state funding sources, that 31% in local roads, that's the share that local governments get of the gas tax, but it's not enough to cover all of what your needs are. And then 6% of your transportation comes from federal sources. Those are the funds that actually flow through organizations like ours, the Wasatch Front Regional Council. And then the last piece on transit, you see the majority of that transit is from, again, local funding sources, mainly sales taxes and transit fares, some federal funds, and a very small slice of state funds for transit. Now, back to this unified transportation plan. How does it get developed? And importantly, what is your role? So first, public involvement, engagement. When I say public here, what I actually mean is you, the cities and the counties being engaged, the city council people, the mayors, the planning commissions. This just happens to be an image of a workshop that we held. You can tell it's pre-COVID because everyone's together and nobody's wearing a mask, but it's a workshop in Cottonwood Heights. We go through a continual process, and we need you to be engaged to tell us what's important to you, so that that input from you and what matters in your community can be built into the official formal transportation planning processes. You do your general plans, and there's a transportation element of your general plan that is specific to your local community. That gets integrated with the broader unified transportation plan. It has to fit together because for your residents, transportation is not something that just stays within the boundaries of one community, right? Your residents are living their lives across borders. We've got to work together. Just a little more technically, and this is the last substantive slide here, the process for projects getting into the Unified Transportation Plan basically goes like this. First, we identify all the possible projects, ones that we've already got on the drawing board, other ideas that may come as you're experiencing growth dynamically in your communities. They are then evaluated and prioritized. What are the most important? What are the projects that have the most bang for the buck? They are the most effective when we do the modeling and analysis of travel demand. And then the next step is to narrow that further by applying financial constraint, which is just a way of saying, what do we have, what funds do we anticipate having available in the future to actually pay for projects? So it's this narrowing process. The last element is to split projects out into phases, because the work that we do looks out over decades into the future. What projects need to be in phase 1, which is essentially the next 10 years? What needs to be in phase 2, the decade after that, and then ultimately phase 3, the decade after that? And then what is there not money to even do in that time horizon? So your role is to think about what your issues are today, what projects are needed today to address transportation needs, and then also to think long-term into the future. What growth are you experiencing? Where is it going to happen? And what are the demands in your community in the future? And we will work with you to help sort all of that out as we go. Now, there's so much to this that we didn't talk about, but we want you to have our contact information. So this is for our organization, me, Ted, Miranda Jones-Cox, who's not here with us today, but she's our government affairs manager. Mike Sobchak, raise your hand, Mike, is our communications manager. Any and all of us are happy to work with you. This is in our portion of the state. As Cameron mentioned earlier, there are other organizations in all the other portions of the state. Utah County is a Mountain Land Association of Governments, et cetera, et cetera. If you're not sure who, just ask me, ask Ted, ask anybody from the league, and we can get you pointed in the right direction. Again, there's a million things we didn't talk about. Technology, telecommuting. I mean, there's just so much to this space, but we wanted to give you a high-level overview and let you know that we are all working together, and we need your engagement to work with your neighbors and with the transportation agencies to make sure that we're identifying the most important solutions for transportation in the future and working together to get them done. So, that is the end of our presentation. I'm looking at Justin, and I think we have time for maybe one question. One question. Yes, go ahead.
You said you want the public involvement, you want our involvement, but it wasn't really clear to me, how do we get involved?
Yeah.
What's the path to get our needs as a local city into this overall plan and engage in that?
Yeah, great question. How do we get involved? Multiple paths. One is talk to us, go on our websites, and seek out information. The other thing is we are going to come to you. Okay, we come and present information to the cities, to the city councils. WFRC, for example, what city are you from?
Perry City.
Perry, okay, terrific. So we set up workshops and invite you. The city elected officials, the planning commissions, we do it at least every year and invite you to participate. We send information out to you. Get on our newsletters, get on our mailing lists. And so we're going to try to make it easy. And then the league also helps push information out. Susan, communications for the league, does a great job of sharing our information also. So there's lots of paths. Okay, in the interest of time, we're going to stop. That's it for transportation, and you'll have some other slightly less interesting topic coming up next. Okay, thanks everybody.